Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name's Andrea Harrington. I'm the Berkshire District Attorney. I am joined today by First Assistant Karen Bell, Mayor of North Adams, Jennifer Maxey, Chief of the North Adams Police Department, Chief Wood, and Detective Lieutenant Ryan Dickinson, who is the commander of the State Police Detective Unit assigned to the Berkshire District Attorney's Office. First, I just want to extend my condolences to the family of Jillian Rosado. This was a terrible, horrible crime that occurred against their loved one, and I want them to know that myself and the investigators working on this case will do everything in our power to ensure that the perpetrator of this crime is held accountable. This morning, I want to report that law enforcement arrested Luis Rosado. He was arrested at approximately 8:30 this morning on a warrant that was obtained by the Berkshire Detective Unit on Tuesday out of the Northern Berkshire District Court. Mr. Rosado was arrested at a residence on Fenn Street in Pittsfield. He was arrested by the State Police VFAS unit, the members of the Berkshire Detective Unit, members of the Pittsfield Police Department, and members of the North Adams Police Department, who took Mr. Rosado into custody without incident. We expect that Mr. Rosado will be arraigned this afternoon in Central Berkshire District Court, as there is no judge that sits in North Adams District Court today. Just a recap of the basic facts of this case. On Sunday evening, a call came into the North Adams Police Department via 911 at approximately 7:54 p.m. North Adams Police and Northern Berkshire EMS responded to 46 Charles Street in North Adams. Inside the residence, they discovered Jillian Rosado. She was deceased at the time. Our State Police Detective Unit responded to the scene and launched an investigation. And later on Tuesday, at autopsy, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner determined that the cause and manner of death was a homicide by multiple stab wounds. We have a little bit of background on the parties in that they had been together for approximately 6 months and they had been married for approximately 5 months. I can give you just a very brief timeline of the events. This is an ongoing investigation. There are still witnesses that the investigators expect to be talking to, and therefore we do have to be somewhat guarded about the facts that we release to the public, but I can assure you that all of the facts of this case will come out through the court process. So we do know that days before the murder, a witness did overhear Mr. Rosado tell his wife, Jillian, that he would kill her if she left him. And then on Saturday, May 28th, we do have evidence that the parties were together in the evening prior to this murder. And communication from Ms. Rosado's cell phone did stop during the time that the parties were together. Then witnesses put the two arguing together that evening prior to Ms. Rosado's murder. I want to thank the Berkshire Detective Unit, the Massachusetts State Police, the North Adams Police Department for their excellent work on this investigation. I also want to thank VFAS and the Pittsfield Police Department for their assistance in bringing Mr. Rosado into custody. I can try to take a few questions. I'm sure that you have a lot of questions. I will answer what I can.
Who called 911?
There was a witness that called 911, but we are not releasing the identity of that individual.
What was the cause of death?
It was multiple stab wounds.
Can you describe the scene where she was found? Was she inside the house, and where inside the house?
Yeah, so Ms. Rosado was located inside her residence, which is the second floor of the building at 46 Charles Street. So each floor has, an apartment that each floor consists of one apartment, and she was found inside the residence.
Was that, was that her house, or was it his residence or her residence? Because they were only recently married.
Yeah, I mean, it's my understanding that, you know, she certainly stayed there and that he also stayed there as well, but they had other residences as well. But it appears that, you know, they both did stay at that residence.
Did they share any children, and were any children potentially present?
To my knowledge, the parties did not share any children.
So it appears from court documents that there were two open cases against Jillian, where Lewis was the named victim. They were both domestic violence cases, and it looks like the prosecutor's office was pursuing charges against Jillian as the perpetrator, alleged perpetrator of domestic violence. So I was wondering why the office was pursuing those charges in light of the accusations Jillian was making about her being the victim of domestic violence.
Yeah, so what I can tell you about this at this time is that, you know, perpetrators of domestic violence can be very manipulative and very savvy about manipulating legal systems in order to carry on their abuse. And sometimes that does include seeking criminal charges against their victim. So what I can tell you right now is that certainly, you know, this office has done domestic violence fatality reviews. We've done 2 reviews with a statewide team in the past, and you know, this is definitely a kind of incident that I think that we would want to look into, like the history of the parties here, and you know, determine like how can we continue to ensure that we're following best practices. My office is certainly, you know, works very collaboratively with law enforcement in having effective responses to domestic violence cases. We just sent a team from the office, including 2 officers from the North Adams Police Department, victim advocates, prosecutors, to the Violence Against Women Conference in Dallas that was held last week. We've done a lot of work in this area, and definitely we will be looking at the facts of this case and the history of these particular parties. I will also say, you know, I can't get into parties' criminal histories. I'm due to the rules of professional conduct, but my office did release a press release back in October of 2022. We did have a successful evidence-based prosecution against Mr. Rosado in a domestic violence case against a different victim.
So in light of you know, the past conviction on domestic violence, why did investigators arrest Lewis and not Jillian in these instances of domestic violence, and why did your office continue to pursue those charges?
So I would say that that's a topic, as I said, that we would need to be looking into the facts and the circumstances of those cases, and you know, working through them with the investigators and discussing, you know, the facts that led to those particular arrests.
Had Jillian been identified in any of your Berkshire County high-risk teams as being a high-risk victim, or you know, somebody who should be watched and kept an eye on?
Yeah, so we do have our high-risk team. It's been in place for just over a year now. We have a number of cases that are being monitored by the high-risk team. We generally do not comment publicly on cases that are being monitored by the high-risk team. Any other questions?
Has the manner of death been reported by your office yet?
So the cause and manner of death, according to the OCME, is homicide by a stabbing.
And what are the full slate of charges against?
So at this time, Mr. Rosado is being arraigned on a single count of murder.
Do they know when the time of death took place? Was it Sunday night or was it earlier?
According to our investigation, the time frame of the death would have occurred on Saturday evening.
But what happened in those 24 hours between when she may have died on Saturday and then when someone called 911? Do you believe that Rosado was evading law enforcement? What was going on there?
Well, this is still under investigation, and you know, we can't comment at this time as to Mr. Rosado's whereabouts between the time that he left the residence and the time he was found at 8:30 this morning.
And what is that Fenn Street residence? Is that somebody's home or?
It's a private residence. Yeah.
How is it associated with Rosado? Family, friends, or?
At this time, all I can say is that it is a private residence on Fenn Street in Pittsfield.
And is there the file associated with the case was as of this morning impounded? Are there plans to unimpound the documents?
So yes, at this time, the probable cause report that we used to obtain the arrest warrant is impounded. It will remain impounded at this time because our investigation is ongoing and there are still witnesses that we are seeking to identify and interview. But yes, when the investigation is complete or more complete, then the PC affidavit will no longer be impounded. Right now we have a particular date, but we'll ask the court to release that as soon as it's no longer necessary in order to preserve the integrity of the investigation. And something that I want to highlight about this particular case is the extreme danger that is that comes about when somebody is has a pattern or practice of committing strangulation. And if you look at our press release from our earlier case with Mr. Rosado, you will see that there was a strangulation charge in his history. Once an individual strangles their domestic partner or their intimate partner, that partner's chance of being murdered goes up by 750%. Strangulation is a very, very dangerous crime. It is a sign of lethality. Our domestic violence task force, we have a big initiative that we had already underway around educating people around the dangers of strangulation. We are doing work with training law enforcement. It is very important for members of the judiciary, members of law enforcement, just members of the public in general to understand what a danger sign strangulation is in terms of, a threat to somebody's safety and well-being.
And how do you flag that? Because I'm sure, like that other partner that he was with, that could be happening. And how are you identifying who those people are and kind of intercepting that?
Well, there's a lot of training that is available in terms of recognizing the signs that an individual has been strangled. So I think first and foremost, it's for law enforcement that are actually responding to these crimes to be trained in the signs of strangulation. We have strangulation worksheets that we have asked for our local police departments to use. That is like a checklist of signs that somebody has been strangled. We're working with them on incorporating those. We're doing trainings around recognizing those signs and doing trainings around how we make, arguments to judges as to, that strangulation has occurred and why it's so significant. But we also want people in the general community to understand the dangers of strangulation, so that, if you hear a friend or a loved one who talks about potentially being strangled, that people understand, how dangerous it is, so that people can respond appropriately.
And can you also just speak a little bit about the resources that are available either through your office or also just generally in the county for people who find themselves in a dangerous situation regarding a spouse or domestic partner?
Yeah, thank you for that. So if somebody is in a situation where they are unsafe and need help, they certainly can call their local police department. They can contact the Berkshire District Attorney's Office. We have victim witness advocates here that do safety planning with victims of domestic violence. We have a very diverse staff. And so we wanted to make sure that people from all parts of our community feel like if they contact law enforcement, they will interact with somebody who they feel comfortable with. And we've worked really hard to make sure that our staff is diverse in every way. I also encourage people to contact the Elizabeth Freeman Center. Elizabeth Freeman Center does really great work with victims of domestic violence. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.